and then of course report back to plenary. So at this stage, I'll hand over to Jean-Francois to talk about lessons learned.
So as a starter, we would just like to review the logistics cluster tasks during the tropical cyclone Pam. First of all, to start with the traditional logistics cluster tasks as defined by the logistics contingency plan and the NDMO SOPs. First, information sharing, CivMil coordination support, interagency coordination, logistics services like transport and storage. And during this operation, NDMO took on an extended role by necessity and through ad hoc arrangements. First in supporting the NDMO logistics, and then as a support to NDMO on regulating humanitarian assistance. During the lessons learned workshop for logistics, many issues were discussed. Two of them we would like to report to you. First, the understanding of the difference between the logistics cluster and the NDMO logistics department. The logistics cluster is not an NDMO unit. NDMO leads the logistics cluster according to the needs of its members. The logistics cluster coordinator and the NDMO logistics coordinator are two different functions. Recommendations were to communicate and advocate for a clear understanding of these distinctions for all the stakeholders, and to familiarize the stakeholders with the various existing response documents. That is the Vanuatu Logistics Contingency Plan, the National Disaster Act, and the NDMO Standard Operating Procedures. Second key issue was the logistics capacity of NDMO. So NDMO logistics was not designed or prepared to take on a central role in national level emergency responses. And the logistics cluster should not substitute for NDMO logistics. Recommendations were to ensure that NDMO is adequately resourced with trained staff to undertake preparedness and logistics response activities, and also to strengthen NDMO logistics capacity and participate as recommended by the 7th Pacific Humanitarian Team meeting in regional support for emergency preparedness.
Thank you, Jean-Francois. So basically what he presented, what was looked at the national level lessons learned workshop, and his first slide presented the traditional role of the LOGS cluster and also the extended role. And what I wanted us to do today is to have a look at that extended role, because many of the issues that came under that extended role, which was support to the NDMO logs and also the regulation of international assistance coming into the country, many of these issues were actually raised yesterday. So we've identified 5 sub-themes which capture this extended role and also some of the issues under the traditional gambit of logistics. So the first one is unsolicited donations, and this isn't an issue about a small island country. These are the same issues that we saw in Christchurch, that you see in Japan, that you see in big developed countries as well, but the issues are the same. So let's look at how we can better manage unsolicited donations. And in particular, at what level should interventions be targeted? So who should be targeting, who should be looking at this, and what can governments do, what can donor agencies do to deal with this issue that is time and time again at every single disaster, such an overwhelming issue. The second one is international assistance. And so by international assistance, we mean the flow of international assistance, whether that's personnel, whether that's relief goods, coming into a country in response to a disaster. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of regulating international assistance? How can we better manage international personnel deployment? I think one of the tables raised something about international personnel need to be disciplined. So how do we do that? And how can we better facilitate international relief aid? So I'm talking about consignments coming in. So the issues under here would be the customs issues, the airport transport clearance issues, the role of foreign affairs and the role of different agencies in facilitating aid to come into the country. Deployment of military assets. So how can we better use these? Coordination and access to assets. Now this came up a number of times that some people or some NGOs, some organizations didn't have access to these military assets to be able to move their goods. And also donor mandates versus national needs. Now we had some examples where civil assets were deployed and would basically arrived in country saying, we're here, where do you want us to go? We also had other civil assets, civil military assets that arrived and basically said, we have this schedule, this is where we're going at this time. If your goods aren't on here, you've missed the boat. So how can we better use the civil military assets when they come into the country? Preparedness and pre-positioning. Did this work? What particular activities should be implemented? And of particular use would be what should be pre-positioned and where, and I'm sure we all have ideas and thoughts on this. Logistics and coordination. So Jean-Francois raised an issue about NDMO logistics versus the Vanuatu logistics cluster. I don't know whether many of you were aware that there was a difference or whether that they were merged. Your thoughts on this would be much appreciated, particularly for the NDMO and the VLC, Vanuatu Logistics Cluster. And how can we strengthen logistics in Vanuatu? Before we break into tables, I would really appreciate if your recommendations, so if you're going to use things like strengthen, please identify what do you actually mean by strengthen? What activities are you referring to? If you're going to use words like enhance or raise awareness, how do you actually mean to do that? So if we could get some level of detail, that would be amazing. So we're going to break now into the various groups. I would ask that Commander, please, if you could be part of the CivMil table. The NDMO, I would really appreciate if you could spread yourselves out to at least one representative per table. So, did that, no? Okay. So these are the table groupings that we've got. And so tables 1, 2, and 5 will be grouped together. Tables 3, 4, and 6. 7, 8, 11, 9, 10, 12, 14, 13, 15. I'm also going to go round, and if groups are too big, I'm going to ask you to migrate and join other groups so that we have an evenly dispersion of people at each group, just to make sure that they're still small enough to be able to elicit some really good, deep, rich conversation. Please use your butcher paper and please record. If there can be a scribe to take down the discussions and also a rapporteur to report back your top 2 recommendations. So I'll leave that up here so you can distribute yourselves. So table 1, 2, and 5 will have question number 1, which is on unsolicited goods. 3, 4, and 6 will have the international assistance question. 7, 8, and 11 will have CivMil. 9, 10, 12 will have preparedness and prepositioning, and 14, 13, 15 will have logistics and coordination. So if I could ask you to start migrating towards those tables, I also have absolutely nothing against if you feel you would be better placed in a specific topic, please make your way there. I will not stop you.